To ask me why I put myself through this torture in writing this review, maybe it's because I want to spare the rest of humanity the suffering I experienced while watching this, I'm gonna call it monstrosity, and let me just put it out there that I couldn't even finish half of season 5. I think literally at one point my sister and I just stopped at one episode midway and decided to never watch it ever again. And I don't even remember which episode it was, as I was so checked out by that point. So I thought, why not make a video about this god-awful series that gets you hooked on cliffhangers and really nothing more, in hopes that no one even thinks about watching this. I'm just kidding, you can watch it if you want to, but here's my warning anyways. Why The 100 is the worst sci-fi show I've ever experienced. Obviously I'm gonna spoil the whole show, and trust me, I'm doing you a huge favor. Hi, I'm Ohms and welcome to Ohms Law, and I'm here to take a huge dump on the 100. Now, before this place smells like some of the slums I've seen in Mumbai, let me just start off with acknowledging that I'm clearly not the target audience for this show. I know it's like meant to be a teen series, but I mean, some of the slaughter that happens here clearly makes this at least a 16+. So I'm imagining people in their early 20s might be watching this. Some of the other elements in it borderline very serious sci-fi, which makes the tone of this series more confusing than Elizataylor's acting, which is absolutely horrible. Her lines are horrible, her mannerisms are awkward, she barely has any motivation, lacks any interesting traits or flaws. This character is just awful, I just don't know what to say. So to avoid just rambling, I'm gonna critique the series starting from the first season, and when I get bored, I'll just stop and wrap things up. So the first season is, albeit, one of the most interesting ones. It has a lot of flaws, but at least it's somewhat consistent and characters aren't all over the place doing ridiculous things. We're introduced to everyone. There's Clarkegriffin, who's the daughter of the Ark's doctor, Abby, Bellamy and Octaviablake, Jasper Jordan, montygreen, ravenreyes, God, these names, johnmurphy, Marcus Kane, and Thelonious Jaha. And these characters just never seem to die and tend to survive impossible situations because the plot needs to happen and because they have a loyal following or whatever. So the 100 are sent down to Earth. Their mission is relatively simple. They have to land there, make sure the Earth is habitable, and head up to Mount Weather to restock on supplies. And shocker, the Earth is fine. Or else, again, the plot won't happen. And shocker, of course, they're not alone. Survivors of the nuclear blasts from the past, the Grounders, are clans who fight amongst themselves and against the Reapers, a cannibalistic enemy of the Grounders. There's also the Mountain Men, but that's the season 2 arc. So throughout the first season, we get general confrontations between the Grounders and the 100. The people sent down have bracelets on them that let the Ark know if they are alive or if they're dead. Bellamy tries to convince them that leaving the Ark behind completely is for the best, and you kind of get his motivation here since his sister Octavia was an illegally born baby who spent her childhood terrified of being discovered. And when she eventually was, their mother was thrown out of the airlock. That's the weird thing about season 1, about this whole show actually. You have this super serious tone with high stakes, whereby people on the Ark get floated for breaking the rules. Then you have this weird drama whereby a bunch of teenagers are left on their own to accomplish a ridiculously important task, not to mention that all of these kids are technically criminals, which makes this plan faulty from the get-go. Luckily, Clark, Wells, who's Jaha's son, Finn Collins, and a few others want to stick with the plan for some reason, making Clark and Bellamy enemies in the entire season. Back on the Ark, the people there are facing a buttload of issues, and they eventually decide that they need to land on the ground as soon as possible. As the season wraps up, Kane, Abby, Raven, and Jaha, along with the rest of humanity's finest, make it down to Earth. Honestly, besides the clunky dialogue, season 1 is fine. You can pretty much watch it and not watch the rest of the show. It has all the generic survival themes such as the strong prey on the weak and the group versus the individual and all that cliche stuff, but for the most part, it's watchable. And you can tell that everyone from the cast and crew really took this seriously. So, season 2. It's surprising how fast things fell apart for the series, especially with the introduction of the Mountain Men and that whole plot. So, these peeps basically went underground to survive inside of Mount Weather. They've been capturing the Grounders and experimenting with them in order to become immune to radiation, turning them into these Reaper things. And so, when they find out that Clark and the people from the Ark's bone marrow might be the key to going outside, let's just say things don't go too well for our main protagonists. Clark really steps it up this season though, when Finn, her love main interest since the first season, kills 18 grounders and is sentenced to death as a repayment by Grounder Commander Lexa. Clark stabs him to death to spare him the torture, and later, when Bellamy and Raven have established radio communications from within Mount Weather, Clark allows an entire peace committee to be killed in order to keep the communications a secret. Lexa kind of convinces her to do it, but she still makes the choice. By the end of the season, and along with Bellamy's help, she makes the interesting choice to kill all the people in Mount Weather through radiation in order to save her people. So yeah, this is why I really hate the show, as Clark makes these ridiculous decisions sometimes without really facing the consequences of her actions. I mean, her mind doesn't break or anything, she just gets sad sometimes and cocks it up to "we have to survive." On the melodrama side of things, Octavia and Lincoln, who's a grounder that Octavia has been watching over since season 1, become a little bit more intimate. And Octavia grows into this new character that can face up against her brother. And this is where the train derails and I stop my detailed summary. At Camp Jaha, the Ark survivors establish an understanding with the Grounders, with Commander Lexa open to accept them into the coalition, giving them the name Sky People or Sky Crew. Yeah, these names just get worse from here. So at the end of the season, Jaha and Murphy arrive to this mansion and find this AI named Ali, who apparently destroyed the world before, so yeah. Season 3 gets more ridiculous with this AI story that I won't get into, and throws in this whole mythology behind the commander and the Ice Nation wanting to overthrow Lexa. There's also this flame thing that's a bio-interface device that was developed by Becca, basically the scientist who invented Ali, who also turns out to be the first commander. So basically, Becca created Ali, who destroyed the world, and then Becca escaped and came back to Earth to try to fix things. The plot becomes all over the place, with Ali wanting to save the human race from another nuclear meltdown. This show derails so quickly that by season 7, we're basically on a different planet, hopping around from one area to the next. It's really something. The characters remain flat almost throughout the seasons, and sometimes just act completely against their original motivations. The only real reason why you just keep going with this show is the plot twists at the end of each episode. Like, by season 5, we're almost literally in the same place we were in season 1, but since everyone is basically dead, the plot shoehorns in these other characters that were off-world just to drive the conflict home. Our main characters end up going into hypersleep and waking up 125 years later while arriving to a different planet. This just sets up for a whole new repeat of everything we've experienced before, but in a more tasteless fashion. I honestly don't know why any of the people working on this project kept going with it. Like, does it really pay that well? I can't imagine walking into set every day and working on a story that is honestly so dumb I could barely get through half of this review before giving up on it. What's strange is that it had all the potential to be something great, it had a great setup at the beginning, and then it just tried to twist the plot with cliffhangers and subvert expectations without really considering the consequences of the devices at play. At some points, you really feel like you're watching a whole different show. The first season really worked in terms of world building, but as the seasons dragged on, literally everyone ends up dying around the main characters except them. You do get the occasional send-off from the main cast, but honestly, these people would be dead within the first few hours they land on the ground. The show keeps repeating this ticking clock plot device, mostly centered around nuclear explosions or fallouts or something. The AI storyline feels like a whole different show altogether, and honestly, it doesn't blend well with this whole post-apocalyptic scenario. It's never clear how these people keep surviving on reserve power, or how they never get sick due to the presence of new viruses or bacteria. There's really very little science behind this series, which is why it blew it for me. Clark just keeps getting more and more generic and annoying by season 5. Her whole love romance with the commander was alright, I guess, but it's not really deep stuff, to be honest. And the other stuff with Bellamy is just, yeah. Her mom ends up falling in love with the man that was trying to space her, by the way. I mean, how do you fall in love with someone who was actively trying to see you dead? It's not like they don't try to explore this or that this couldn't be interesting, it just seems way too rushed and unbelievable as it is presented. Overall, I really wouldn't recommend this series to anyone besides the first season. Actually, just watch the first season if you're bored and stop. From weak character development to a loosely tied together plot, this series had so much potential, but it fell flat on its face before it even got off the ground. Don't ask me how it got through 7 seasons worth of storytelling without getting shut down, but I guess the fans weren't upset, so I have no reason to be. Let me know what you guys think in the comments and if you disagree with me. Like this video if you enjoyed it, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel, as that will really help me grow it and get me to bring you more content like this. And I'll see you next time with more reviews, and as always, thank you for watching.